Well, welcome back to Army Up Table Talk, which is a series from the Army Up team where we talk with subject matter experts and individuals in the Army and military spouse community about spouse career initiatives and advancement. And today we are joined by Miss Maria McConville. And one of the topics that we're going to be discussing, and I know is near and dear to her heart, and also I'm very passionate about, is licensure reciprocity, and what some of that process and some of the advancements that have been made in that regarding getting spouses employed quicker once they relocate. So I understand that recently you've been working on improving licensure reciprocity for the military spouse community. Can you talk a little about that? And for those that may not know, what exactly licensure reciprocity is at the state level?
Sure. Thanks, Angie. Well, I think it's about 35 different professions require a license. And so I know myself as a registered dietitian, I have my national license or certification to retain my status as a registered dietitian. But then almost all of the 50 states require state licensure. So when I moved to a new state with my husband in the military, I've had to get licenses, and I think I've had 7 or 8 different state licenses. And the problem, and I understand that, that's how states make some money. And I understand that states need to make money. And so, it makes sense that there's a licensing process, as well as having checks and balances to make sure that this person operating in this capacity is doing so lawfully and safely. So there's a lot of reasons why states have licensure for different professions, but where it can be cumbersome for military spouses is because we move so often. The process of getting relicensed in a state can be time consuming. Right. It can be expensive, just a lot of, and there's been times when I maybe only wanted to work part-time or do some consulting. And so then by the time you pay for your license and and every state is different. That's what's difficult as well. Some states I have to do background checks and fingerprinting, and then I have to pay all the other states to tell this new state that I was in good standing in their state. And so the process can also be takes so long to come back that by the time a spouse gets licensed in the new state, it's time to move again. So obviously it's a state-by-state decision, and there can't be like a national mandate, but the defense, so we have a defense liaison office, and they work with the states trying to ensure that the states are military friendly, not just for spouse employment, but for veterans and for the military, as well as for the spouses. So they advise the states on some of these policies that they can enact so that it is more military friendly. And so a lot of the states actually are going towards this reciprocity of licensure. So if a military spouse has a license that is in good standing, either in a previous state or a home of record, then they will give reciprocity, and they can give reciprocity in different ways. It might be that they just blanket say, okay, if you're in good standing in that state, we will accept that and issue a license in our state. Some other states say, well, we'll expedite your licensure. We'll have it within 90 days. Some of them will waive the fees. Some of them will give a provisional license. So there isn't one way that licensing is done across the board, but we're making a lot of progress. I think maybe upwards to 10 states now have the reciprocity where if, hey, you're in good standing in one state, you can practice in our state. And so what I've been able to do just a couple months ago, I was able to work with the state of Massachusetts. We don't have a lot of Army in Massachusetts. There's more Air Force, Navy, but we do have Army National Guard as well as some active duty Army. And I was able to be an advisor for the Military Affairs Department of the governor's office and provide them with some information about why it's difficult for spouses and how they can write some of their legislation to be more friendly towards military spouses and licensure.
Awesome. So what are some challenges that are still in this area and some things that we as a military spouse community can advocate to further advance this?
Some of the big challenges that I've seen is obviously cost. So certain professions, the cost of licensure is high, but you know that the Army does reimburse. I believe it's up to $500 to a spouse. A little bit of hiccup with that is it's done through the active duty member, of course. And I hear that that can take a little bit of a time to get that reimbursed. But I think that also AER, so the Army Emergency Relief Fund, can give you a grant or even a scholarship if your fees are higher than that. So we still have a little bit of work to do there. I also think another challenge is for certain professions where you have to have supervised hours. For example, I've talked to spouses who are social workers, and to be a licensed clinical social worker, you have to do so many supervised hours. And we had a spouse that I got to engage with who had accumulated so many supervised hours in one state, and just as she was finishing those required hours, they were PCSing to another state, and that state said they wouldn't accept her supervised hours from the previous state, and the cost and the time of starting over with supervision would have been astronomical. So I think that we were able to help her through the Defense Liaison Office to work with that incoming state to see if they could accept some of those hours. And that's something that I also spoke to the state of Massachusetts about, is looking at some of those professions where, like supervision hours could transfer over. So that's something that they're doing.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much for talking about licensure reciprocity, and we will try to put together, are there some websites and resources that we can possibly link to this video that might give people added information?
Absolutely. So the Department of Labor has a great interactive map. And if you go onto the Department of Labor's site, and I can get you the exact link, you can click on the state that you're moving to or that you're interested in going to, and you can see what their current policies are. And a lot of the states have a link to their professional licensing division. And then you can contact the professional licensing division from that state and find out what their requirements are, and, work with them to see if you can start the process for relicensing.
Yeah, that's awesome. So we will actually include that in the link as well, so people will have access to some of those resources. Well, thank you so much for joining us on our inaugural edition of Army Up Table Talk.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.